Hey everyone, I hope you're doing all right today. So I want to give you an update on Trump's $2,000 checks because the talk around has grown even bigger and a lot of people are still confused or getting their hopes up without seeing the full picture. President Donald Trump has brought this idea back again, calling it tariff dividend, and it's picking up attention in a way that feels familiar but also a little different this time. You might have seen pieces of it online or heard something from friends, but there's a lot happening underneath the headline that affects your wallet in ways most people haven't explained clearly. So yeah, let's go through this together so you really understand what's happening and what's not. So let's start with the big headline. President Trump has revived this idea of giving Americans a $2,000 check funded entirely by tariff money. He's described it as a dividend, basically saying that because tariffs bring in billions of dollars, that money should be returned to middle and lower income Americans. And he's repeated this multiple times, both in interviews and on social media. So the idea isn't just a random one-off comment. It's something that the White House has actually said they're looking into. But here's the thing a lot of people don't know. Even though tariffs do bring in money, and the Treasury has reported that customs duties pulled in around $195 billion in 2025, that doesn't automatically mean there's enough revenue for checks of this size. And more importantly, even if the money did add up, the president can't legally send checks out on his own. Congress has to approve it. So right away, you can see there are a few layers here that people don't really hear about when all they see is a headline like $2,000 checks are coming. Now, something that's got people paying attention is the timing. Trump has said the checks wouldn't go out this year, that it would be sometime next year. And if you've been following politics for a long time, you might notice a pattern here. Next year is the lead up to the 2026 midterms. Promises like this tend to get a lot of traction right before election seasons because, well, people are struggling. Prices are high, rent is high, food is high, insurance is high, gas is still bouncing around. A lot of Americans hear $2,000 and think, wow, that would actually help me catch up or breathe a bit. But I want to walk you through something really important that most people don't realize. When economists have looked at the numbers, they say the math doesn't quite support the plan as it's being described. And let me explain this in plain language because you deserve clarity, not jargon. If the government sent everyone $2,000, including kids, that would cost around $600 billion. If they only sent it to middle and lower income Americans, the cost would still be around $400 to $500 billion. Tariffs bring in less than that. Even in a strong year, they're around $200 to $300 billion. So there's this gap, and whenever there's a gap, Congress gets involved and arguments start, and the whole process slows down. So then people ask, well, okay, can you borrow the difference? And the answer is maybe. But that raises a whole new set of problems because borrowing more money during a time when inflation is still a concern can push prices up even more. And that's not me saying it. That's analysts and economists who have studied what happened with the pandemic stimulus checks. One Federal Reserve study estimated that those checks added about 2.6 percentage points to inflation. Not the whole thing, but a meaningful chunk. And something worth mentioning because people bring this up a lot. Tariffs themselves already increase everyday prices. A Yale study found that current tariffs are costing American households around $1,800 a year. So the same policy that raises prices is also the one being used to justify sending checks. It's kind of like taking $20 out of someone's wallet, handing them $10 back, and saying you gave them a gift. And I'm not saying that to be harsh. I'm saying that because that's how a lot of people describe it in their own words. Now I want to touch on the legal part, because this also gets overlooked. Even though the president can set tariffs, he cannot spend money without Congress. The Constitution is really clear about that, and the Treasury Secretary himself has already confirmed that legislation would be needed. So no matter how many times Trump says he wants this to happen, it can't happen unless Congress agrees. And right now, no bill has even passed a committee. There was one bill from Senator Josh Hawley called the American Worker Rebate Act, which would have used tariffs to fund rebate checks, but it's stuck in the Senate Finance Committee. And there's this huge Supreme Court case happening right now about whether Trump's tariffs are even legal in the first place. And this is a big deal. The administration has been arguing the tariffs are regulatory, meaning they're not really about raising revenue. But the problem is Trump saying he wants to use the tariff money as revenue for checks. Those two positions don't match. If the court decides the tariffs were mostly about money, then the government might have to refund a lot of those tariffs to businesses. And if that happens, the money for checks disappears completely. So that's another loop that not many people talk about. There's a plan for checks, but the very thing that funds them might get pulled off the table by the courts, and no one knows when that decision is coming. Another thing to consider is inflation. And yeah, I know people are tired of hearing that word, but it matters. If you remember the pandemic checks, you probably know the excitement when the payments hit your account. But you also probably remember how quickly everything got more expensive. Groceries went up, rent went up, cars went up. And this isn't just theory. The St. Louis Fed published research on it, and analysts today are saying the same thing again, that $2,000 checks in this economic climate could push prices up at the worst possible time. Now, what's interesting is that the White House hasn't backed away from the idea completely. Trump and his team keep saying the president wants it to happen, and they're studying the numbers. And he's pushing his additional idea, where he wants Republicans to support putting money directly into your health savings account. So on one hand, you have this big check idea. On the other hand, you have this more healthcare-focused idea. And both of them are being talked about right before a crucial election year. And speaking of politics, there's clearly an element of strategy here. These checks would be extremely popular with many voters. They'd make headlines. They'd show up in campaign ads. And honestly, they make a lot of people feel seen. There's no denying that. When people feel ignored or financially stretched thin, a big promise like this hits differently. It feels like someone is noticing your struggle. Even if the math is messy, the emotional side of it is powerful. So then the question becomes, is this a real policy or is this more of a political message? And right now, if we're being calm and fair, it looks more like a message. There's no bill, no timeline, no funding source that actually covers the full cost, and no legal path without Congress. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does mean it's not close. And some analysts believe the idea could resurface closer to midterms if consumer spending weakens or if economic anxiety rises. Tariffs, checks, rebates, these things tend to make a comeback when the public mood is fragile. And right now, a lot of households are feeling that fragility. So yeah, where does this leave you? It leaves you informed. You now know the headline, the numbers, the legal hurdles, and the real-world impact. And that's more than what most people online ever get. The goal here isn't to tell you what to think. It's to help you understand what's real, what's likely, and what deserves a second look. And if you ever feel confused or frustrated by these announcements, you're not alone. A lot of people talk about struggling with rent, food prices, medical bills, and just try and keep up. Relief isn't a silly thing to hope for. It's human, but it's also important to know what's real, so you can plan your own life with clarity.